Oh, I'd like to think that all the things are working, including the music. Let's see. I think that's true. Lots of things. So many things. Let's make sure we got everything working before I say hello, shall we? For example, the music. What's up? You know, don't make me play this again, because I will. I'll play it again. It's like I have to tell it to show the video and then I hide the video. Otherwise, it won't work. So that's weird to me. Whatever. Hey, at least I can hear it as well, so I can join you in enjoying the music. Hello, if you're wondering what the hell's going on, there's an ape in a jungle. Plays Valorant, and Valorant is down. That's fine. Uh, in the spirit of streaming at random times and being completely unpredictable, because who cares? I'm doing this for me, not for you. Um, I am streaming, and we have other things to do besides play Valorant that can take our time while we wait. You know, I might play Valorant later. That's fine. But for now, from the jungle, we will discuss a card game that we've been working on, and don't tempt me. I may actually do a coding stream. I've been avoiding doing that because that's not fun. That's not fun viewing. That's not fun to be an audience standing over the shoulder of a programmer. But that's what this channel is about. If you're new, or if you're just watching a VOD and wondering what's going on, an ape in a jungle designs video games, makes video games, and plays Valorant. That's what this is. We have a YouTube channel and putting out videos to help people with things like the mechanic of shuffling cards, because lots of games have that same mechanic, whether it's actually a card game or not. That's that's some of the things we do, and it became inspiration for a card game that we are now engaged in. The week that has passed has been filled with playing Valorant and working on a card game that we are being cheeky and calling Shuffle Wars. Shuffle Wars. That's probably the worst name. No, it is definitely the worst name. And yet, it's a place to start, and it's a place where we can begin to talk about the process of design, going from nothing and making something, and the process of design that takes something that's already there and makes it better. So excuse me while I configure a tablet to draw, because drawing's good. Yes, sir. Shuffle Wars, the worst name in the world. And anytime that I have people in chat that are willing to talk about games, participate in the game design and development and testing, yay. But for now, among other things that are generic and weak and need improvement, this title is a good representation of that. It's a terrible title, but it's what we got, and yay! And we will work with it until we find something better as the design process dictates. This is exactly what the design process is about. We'll throw something down. That way we're not afraid to start. We're not afraid to get it wrong. We're not afraid that it's not the best design. We're sure that it's not the best design. And so let's move forward boldly. And when it is down, when there is something in place that we can critique, that we can say, hey, that's terrible, let's make it better. Or we can say, here's something about it that's okay, but here's a place that can be improved. We are then performing design and guaranteeing that it will improve, because we can focus on it and act on it. Like I said, we've been doing this for a week. A week? That's a long time. No. How many games have you played that you paid money for that took a week? No. This is more along the lines of a game jam, but I do other stuff, and I'm doing this casually. Like how I play Valorant, it's casual. Well, Shuffle Wars will be a two-player game, and I've sketched this out a few times already, but the idea is you're going to be one player who's holding 5 cards and deciding which cards to put down on the table. There will be another player. So a multiplayer game, I think that is where we're going. We're currently building it in Unity. I'm not opposed to working in Unreal at all, but we're in Unity now. It's good. I'm not going to explain it. Who would I explain it to? There's no one here. Player 1, Player 2, they're going to decide which cards to play down. There will be 3 rounds. These are the things that we've already decided this week. That the cards will be played in 3 rounds. The first round having 3 cards going up against 3 cards. The second round having 4 cards going against 4. And the third round, if you need to, because this would be essentially overtime, will be 5 cards versus 5 cards. So the players are there, they're looking at their cards and deciding which ones to play. These are the cards in your hand. These are the cards that you play. This is the vernacular we've been developing over the past week. So, Shuffle Wars. What are we talking about? What are these cards? Is this like a card building, a deck building kind of a game? Not necessarily. And you'll excuse me for a second. Technical issues. Okay. I spent December getting the system of technical things in place, and I'm still practicing. Okay. Is this a deck building game? Not really. At the moment, I just care that you can do something on the line, in the metaphor of combat. The player looks at these cards in their hand and decides which to play because the card... Oh, do we have somebody in the stream? Hello. Buffon? I'm sorry, am I not... I'm not going to say that right. My day is going well. How is your day going? Thank you for stopping by. And I appreciate the follow. Welcome. We're in a jungle and we're making a card game. I was in the middle of describing a card battle game called Shuffle Wars, and it's a generic name. We've been working on it for a week. Welcome. Welcome. I do stream daily. Yesterday I did not because I do other things. And in fact, I'm only scheduled to stream Friday, Saturday, Sunday. But I am sort of casually committed to streaming every day because I can. And it's casual. I hope you might be interested in, game design, if not card games. Because that's what we're talking about here while we wait for Valorant to sort of get back up and running. We do also casually play Valorant. So, it's all that. As I was saying, this card game we've been working on for a week, we're thinking about 3 rounds of play, and the players do decide which cards they want to play down. They might be holding 5 cards in their hand. First round, they're going to lay down 3 cards. And rather than being more of a deck building game, I think this is more like each match you will be dealt these cards. I think there's a deck of 50 cards that we have with silly names. You want to see the silly names that we got? They're pretty silly. I mean, I had to come up with 50 card names and just names. But, Rocket Dragon, Cougar Gun, Unstoppable Force, Tactical Squid. I mean, it doesn't matter. What we're trying to do is perform some design, and Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you for your time and attention. I appreciate that. What we are doing is working from nothing, and so putting anything down is good, and then we improve. This is the design process. So if the names are silly, including the title of the game, that's fine. If the gameplay is silly at the moment, that's okay. Or incomplete, that's okay. We're not afraid to start, and we're not afraid to continue on with it. I appreciate the follow, and thank you for stopping by. I do like the interaction with chat and the chance to talk with you. Thanks. Thank you. You're welcome to join Discord. You can just use the command Discord. And yeah, thank you very much for stopping by and for the follow. But I'll continue. The idea is if the player's looking at their card and deciding which ones to play, they need to know something about it. So more than just the picture, which I'm currently thinking the picture might be the dominant thing on the card. Along with the name and the picture, the card has stats, and the stats really matter. And what we decided was if it is battle, like everything else, I just threw these things down. If it is battle, power, defense, these sounds like things you need to have in battle. And we figured out what to do with these after the fact, but initially they were just names. Power, defense, these are stats. Numbers between 1 and 10. We might also talk about speed, that is to say, this could also be useful in battle, and we did decide how that will work in our thing. Health, for sure. We want to have hit points, and I think health rating is, finding out who's going to die first. But then we wanted luck, or at least I thought maybe luck would be good. Right. Yay, thanks for follow. I appreciate that. Amelia, thank you. Welcome. We're making a card game while we're waiting for Valorant. I mean, we've been making this for a week, so it's not like I did this just now. But we're describing a battle card game, and currently talking about the stats of the cards. Welcome. Thank you for the follow. Appreciate that. And sorry, I have to mute for a second. But my day is going well, and thank you for thank you for following. How's your day going? Yeah, if you actually do the commands, here, I'll help you. The chatbot can help with everything in the universe. I don't need to do that. When you get to Discord, you can easily see what's going on and how to find me. I'm there. All right, back to this. We wanted to think about the stats on the cards in card games, well, in any card game. The cards have meaning because of the rules of the game, but in many battle card games, sorry, I need to mute on occasion, and it's just because it's Tuesday. But if I do, you'll excuse me. In our card game, like many battle games, it's the stats printed on the card that give it the meaning, so the player brain can figure out what to do with the cards they have in their hand and decide what to do. I needed some complexity with these cards, sorry, because if it's too simple, there's not much for the brain to chew on. And so it needs to have some complexity. Excuse me. Apologies. Things beyond my control. So that is why I have 5 stats. I could have just as easily said, yeah, there's a number attached to the cards, and that determines their power, for example, or something. So they could go into battle. But it's far too simple. So I opted for 5 and just said, I'll figure it out later, which we have. Over the course of the week, we have built up more of this. To the extent that we actually know how power and defense work against each other when one card attacks another, we use speed to determine who goes first, and then it goes back and forth in turns. We use health to say you start with those hit points, and then those hit points can be reduced in battle until it's 0 and you're defeated. Luck was interesting. We decided that in case one card is about to be defeated, luck could be in play and could actually turn the battle around at the death below. So that's the current theory. Again, we will keep improving. That's the design process. But we needed to at least test that theory between 2 cards. And so we did. In the Unity game engine, although we could have played in the Unreal game engine anytime, we did a simple test. We have some code to enable us to test between 2 cards. And this, again, does not look like anything yet because we really just need to perform the design process and test our theory about what might work well. Currently, our best guess about what would work well is 50 cards, 2 players, and these stats, so that when one card, in the instance that one card needs to fight another, the battle could be figured out. As I mentioned before, those stats come into play to determine who goes first, how many hit points you have, the power versus the defense determines how many hit points are being reduced each turn, etc. Well, that all needs to be tested, and so we did this test of it. If I play this tool that's only meant to test, it is not the game, is trying to take the deck of cards that we initially had. There's 50, and they all have the names here, and they all have the stats here that we talked about. And a lot of those stats are random at this point. It doesn't matter. We'll fix that later. But 5 cards have been dealt to 2 players, at least in spreadsheet form like this. That's fine for now. I need to make sure the rules of the game, as we have outlined them and designed them as our best guess tells us, allows us to test whether having 2 cards, the first card from each player's hand, when battling together, might result in a battle that seems decent. So here we have 2 cards going back and forth. They are reducing the health of the other as they attack. Eventually, one wins. And before, we were really just seeing it in text form like this. And I think on day 3, I said, no, that's clearly not good enough. Card battle games have over-the-top effects, so at least let's just implement some effects. So not that this is final, because we are doing design process, and so it's going to look gross in the beginning, but we do have visual effects that we implemented as well, so that at least our test between 2 cards happens to look, like 2 cards are actually battling. And at least we can see the name of it and stuff. Everything else is simply representative of our current best guess, which only includes how one card would battle another. But clearly, that is not good enough. So, where we are today, a week into this effort of making a card battle game, is to implement more than 1 card. If this all is fine, and we should, for the moment say it is fine until we see reason for it to not be okay. Now we need to think about more than 1 card. If one player lays down 3 cards in round 1, this is round 1, and we're going to do a best 2 out of 3, we might go into overtime and do round 3. Round 1 has 3 cards laid down on each side. Player 1, player 2. If this is true, there were a number of considerations we wanted to test next. One was, do they just all battle at the same time, or is there an order to the cards that go into battle? And if there is an order, like this one attacks this one, is it that this battle is resolved before anything else happens? Or is it that this one begins, and in the middle of this battle is also joined? These are good questions. This would dramatically change the results of the battle, potentially, depending on how that rule is played out. And game design really is about crafting the rules that make the player experience. So, our current best guess is that there's going to be 3 cards, and therefore we need to test more than 1 card versus 1 card. If there is more than 1 card, could one, for example, help its neighbor card? Could, if this card wins the battle, could this card come and help during this battle? And if that's the case, we could see some tactics and some strategy emerge that the player can use in their deciding which card to play during this round. Long story short, we need to figure out what this is. We need to figure out how 1 card can battle more than 1 card. Potentially, we need to figure out an n number of cards, an arbitrary number of cards versus an arbitrary number of cards. I don't know that we would ever get to a space where there's 5 versus 5 all at once, but it could be. Having 1v1 was necessary to figure out just the mechanics of battle based on those stats. But now that we've figured that out and it looks decent until we find a better rule set, now it's time to look at this. And now it's time to figure out how this works out. We liked, or at least I think I'm going with the idea, that if this card wins, it can help its neighbor. This is very much like Valorant, where you have a corner that needs to be peeked. There's an enemy here, and you and your teammate decide you're going to swing together, because although one of you may die, you're absolutely going to trade him out. This mechanic, this trading mechanic, is exactly like what I was thinking about here. And it could be useful to think about the strategy and tactics when you lay down a card, that if it's strong enough, it can help its neighbor, and you can plan for that when you lay the card down. This is good for the player to chew on and think about, and I think it's an important part of what will be the game. Well, that's where we are. We have done a little bit of extra work since the last stream to think about how these lanes of combat, where you lay down 1 card in 1 lane, and then you decide what order in battle they might go in, like 1, 2, 3, how this actually works. Because if, say, these cards go into battle and this one went first and won its battle so it can come and help, but it dies, it is traded. Perhaps this happens, right? Well, now there's this empty lane, right? Both these cards have been killed. And now there's this empty lane. Could this card help this card in their battle? If that's true, we have to do something about this lane. We have to actually collapse this lane. And squiggly lines aside, that means there's some rules and mechanics that I wanted to develop. So I didn't mean for this to be a coding stream, but going to be a coding stream. Here's the code that we're using currently to test 1 card versus 1 card, and I don't need to go through it all. But the idea is these are some of the things that we recognize. There was a pile of cards. There were 50, and they were dealt to 2 hands. We selected 1 to play, and we played them. We said, go. That's what this variable does. The rest of the code handles some of our early tests to just make a deck and shuffle it and to deal it out so that we could verify that that's working and we can move on to more complicated things. The rest of this deals with the actual battle. This is where we compare the power versus defense, and we reduce the health, and we make one, if there is a death blow, potentially win with luck, etc. And there's some visual effects implemented here too. So that's nice to make sure a 1v1 battle is done. But as we're talking about now, we want to do more than 1v1. So I immediately began a new thing that we can use to test more than one card. And so I will ignore the old test and move on to bigger and better things. This new script has largely just code copied from the old one, because if it works, great, we're done. So we're just going to copy it and use it again. This is tested and ready to go. So everything from the effects to dealing the cards is just sitting there. But what we are talking about is a new way of looking at the battle. Right now, the battle is taking place because, as we saw in our 1v1, one card was going against one card. And we were really just asking, hey, is player one going first? If not, then it's player two's turn, etc. We're keeping track of hit points, and we're deciding whether or not the death blow has been had, and if the battle is still going, and if player one won the battle, etc. But if there's more than one card, this is inadequate. There's more than two cards, right? More than two going on. So I need to rethink how this data, how the battle, I'm now calling a skirmish, might actually be done, because now this can handle more than one card. Actually, I should label it as plural because it is more than one card. Potentially it's just 1v1, but it could be 1v3. Could even be 5x5, who knows? The way that we do turns is also different because it's not just back and forth. There could be two cards on one side, and they could both go first. So there's actually a reason to think that there's an order to the battle. This is just rethinking what we had before. This was our best guess about how a battle between two works, and we decided that's great, except now we want more than one, so that's inadequate, and so it could be better. Design says you now throw that old one away, take what works well, and improve. So that's one of the things we're improving. We can now do more than one card. Otherwise, yeah, we're keeping track of more than one card's hit points, and we're still trying to figure out if player one won or not, but the changes we needed to make are already there. So that's kind of where we're at in terms of making more than one card battle. The other part that was sort of, well, it was going to be a distraction, frankly. A distraction for me in coding. The idea that this lane could collapse means that I really need to keep track of things like if I'm in perspective, looking at the three cards that are laid down, and the other three cards are on the other side of the table in perspective here. This lane and this lane and this lane are things that need to be managed. If that lane collapses, I would like this lane to move in, that lane to move in, so there's only two. Hope that makes sense. Well, it occurred to us, or me, that there is the same kind of mechanism in terms of the order of the cards. If I have three cards, one may be first, one may be second, one may be third, and if a card dies, is defeated, it's not three anymore, now it's two. So likewise, there's a management of lanes that could be expanded or collapsed, and there's a management of, I guess, battle order is what I'm currently calling this. Attack order, battle order, something. these things are the same mechanism, just in two different dimensions. One is across, one is forward. And in fact, there's other places where I found this mechanic of collapsing and expanding lanes, of moving cards from one lane to another and shifting the other one that's there around with it. And all this shifting around and the shiftable space is also done in the hands that you might be dealt. You might be looking at the cards and decide, and looking at one, like moving it around. I mean, like you hold a deck of a hand of cards in your hand, you might move them around. And this mechanism of like moving this one here and therefore these two slide over or shift over means that it's the same mechanism as these lanes that we've been talking about. So there is a shiftable space, in this case a hand of cards, or in this case a set of lanes to attack in, or in this case a set of attack orders of where each card can only occupy one of those slots. Whether it's the attack order or the lane or the position in your hand, a card can only occupy one slot, and perhaps the number of slots can be expanded or collapsed, but the space is shiftable such that things can slid around and moved around. I guess there's a very easy way to demonstrate that, which is this mechanic right here that we see in the interface. Here's a bunch of cards. Here's a bunch of cards. And as I grab one and move it, the other cards in this array or this series, this shiftable space, move around it so that I can shift things around. This is the mechanic that we're talking about. So I realized we need that in our game in multiple places. And wouldn't it be nice if we just had that available to be easily implemented? And so shiftable space is what we're talking about. We use it in multiple places, but it's all the same idea. And the shiftable could be a card, or it could be, well, I guess it's always card in our game, but it is generic. It is applicable to other situations as needed. In coding, we typically want to find that opportunity to use it in more than one place. Well, we need a way to test this too, so I made a new tool to test shiftables. That's what we're going to call them. It's a shiftable space and the shiftable items in the space. So we have a way to say, and I did do some code. I guess if I'm going to do something resembling a coding stream, I should actually show the code. But I'm holding a pen, so it's a little difficult. The shift space, again, that's just a number of slots where shiftable items can sit. But then we want to be able to add a new shiftable to that space. So there is a function. That's what this is. It does that. It makes a new one sitting in the space. We just tell it where to go. And we need to remove one. If we can add one, we can also remove one. This would be like I place the card down in the lane, or the card is defeated in battle. Configuring blockage, meaning as I shift something around, it knows, the shiftable things know whether it can just be cleanly shifted over because the space next to it is empty or not. It might be at the edge of the shiftable space as well. So then I want the ability to potentially remember whether or not this card is being held and inspected, for example. So I have that, I guess. But then I shift the element. This is actually doing the work that we just showed. This would be checking to make sure we can shift it. Otherwise, we don't. But we do shift, and that is a matter of saying whether we're taking a particular item in the shiftable space in its position in that space, and whether we are shifting it up or ascending, or we're shifting it down or descending. And we might simply switch it with its neighbor if that's if that makes sense. For example, if the next space next to it is empty, we would just switch the two. Otherwise, we actually need to look all the way down the line of shiftable things that are together to find an empty space. If there is an empty space at the end of that line, then we will shift all of them. So that's what this code is currently doing, is looking down to find the end position where it might be empty and potentially shifting them all. That's what this is. Cascade is another way of saying do all the things until you can't do them anymore. So a cascade shift is moving them all down that way. So, but if we are just switching them, like the space next to me is just empty, or if the other side of the thing next to me is actually the end of the shift space, we might just switch instead. And so we do. This is the system of shifting items inside a shiftable space. And it was made from rules, just like rules of the game we might develop. These rules together make a system. And so this is technically a shiftable system that we've created. Here's where we can actually collapse a space, which just says, as long as it's a good space to collapse and there isn't something already there, go ahead and reduce the size of this shiftable space and move everything together. Likewise, I realize I need something to expand the space because, first of all, it makes sense if we have a collapsible space that we should also have a mechanism to expand, to add a lane, for example, or add a new card that we place down. It's possible. Let's imagine for a second that we're developing this game, and at some point later on we decide, Shuffle Wars really needs something new. It's okay, but it's kind of boring. I mean, I expect this, frankly. At some point, we're going to say we would like something new in this card battle game because it could use just a little extra complexity for the player to consider, to be challenged by, to work with in terms of their tactics or something. So it could be, I don't know, I want to account for all the possibilities at this point, just in case. Wouldn't it be nice if I already had the code to do something like, there is a special card in your hand that allows you to, resurrect, resurrect a dead card. So you actually go into the discard pile. Imagine there is a discard pile. And you pull out a card at random, and you are able to enlist it as one of your cards. And you can place it down anywhere you want. Well, this would require you're able to, add a new lane or expand the shiftable space to add a new lane, to add a new order to the battle. In other words, I need the shiftable space to not just collapse when a card dies, but potentially, maybe, expand when you add a new card. Either in this special case, or even if I'm just laying cards down to play. It may actually start as a shiftable space of like one slot and be expanded as you lay cards down. I guess I'm also thinking ahead to how this looks to the player. Here's the screen that they are looking at as they're playing the game. I like the idea that I can visualize what this would look like for a player who's looking at their opponent on the other side of the table. Potentially they've already laid down some cards, and there's some slots to lay down cards here or something. And so the screen might be laid out like this, where the player could scan over the cards they have in their hand. Maybe as they're hovering over these cards, the card kind of peeks up a little bit, so that as you drag across, each one is sort of animating a little bit and going up and down. But you could click one, and if you do, maybe it peaks up higher. And you could drag it somewhere. Maybe you drag it to the top. I guess if I have my avatar on the screen, I'll put it over on this side. But the point is, you could inspect the card closely and actually read the stats and see what the card is about. Or you could drag it to this middle space to lay it down somewhere in this grid. where it is in a lane and it's also in an attack position. And potentially, as you're still holding onto the card, drag it around so that it's in different lanes and there's a shiftable mechanic in effect, but it could also be moved up or down to be more or less first or last or somewhere in between in the attack order. And in all that, watching it move around and shift around in an animated way, still using our mechanic, but just looking prettier, I think is where I'm taking this, because I'm aware of how this should look to the player at all times. It's the player experience I'm concerned with first and foremost. Welcome to design. So if that's true, and we have the mechanic for it, I think everything except the remove shiftable space is ready to go. This might be the layout that is the current design. If I'm sort of storyboarding how this looks for right now, it might look something like this. And I would suggest that this, I mean, it's sort of like one idea leads to another, but the ability to move cards around in the space you play and being able to not just adjust the lane that it's in, but adjust the attack order could lead to more than one formation. I've been using this echelon formation as just a placeholder for what we might do, but I could imagine this could just be a locked thing that always happens round one. But imagine you could totally play with this and have different formations as the player wants it, to the extent that you could decide which one's going to go first, second, and third. Potentially even, I don't know, are they all in the same spaces? I'm thinking this is probably not where we want to go, where they're in the same attack order and in a line. Only because I want the player to make choices. It's interesting how this would actually make like no choice at all. Just saying throw all the cards in and go is almost like you're not challenged to make a decision that might be difficult. And I think that's antithetical to playing a game. So anyway, my point is there could actually be more going on with this laying down of cards, and potentially this is part of tactics. This is part of strategy that could emerge from this simple simple battle game. We'll see. I don't know. Part of design really is just throwing something down and then looking at it being like, okay, this could be a little better. This is okay, but no. And you know what? This would be better if it were round, wouldn't it? Let's try that. And you just keep refining and refining until you get something better. Actually, art does the same thing. So in that way, we've been playing around with the card game over the course of a week. And there's a decent amount of, at least visual progress in our game so far. But the latest progress has been non-visual, because we're looking for just the ability to shift things around. And so being able to make a test where we have things, and I literally just put silly names in here, with some empty slots, right? These are the proper shiftable items that we coded. They do know whether or not this slot is filled, and they know whether or not they are blocked in the ascending or descending direction. This one is on the edge, so it cannot go any lower in the order. It is the first position, and so it is blocked descending. But the one next to it is actually empty, and so it knows that it is not blocked if it were ascending. Each shiftable item knows this, and so we are able to test some of our mechanics in this system. We can ask this first position item to ascend and shift right now and see what it does. Well, it simply switched places with the one next to it because it found out that it was an empty space and could just do that. So that's all it needed to do. If I ask it to ascend again, and right now this thing is on position 1, if I ask it to shift again, we saw it push all the other things up to fill in this blank space that was here. So now there's 2 blank spaces in the beginning of this shiftable space, and we've shifted these things up, which is exactly what we want. If I, for example, take this penguin and shift it down, descending, and it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to shift this penguin descending. We've now made an empty space at position 4, and these 3 things have shifted down because there was room to do so. I could shift it further because it's now in position 3. I'll do that. And now we've made those empty spaces here. So this is properly shifting around. If I try to shift things too far, it will tell me it can't. Or actually, if I try to shift penguin descending now, it will actually switch with Billy. That is what it's meant to do. And I could continue to shift it for as long as I want. You can imagine that I'm grabbing penguin and trying to move it around, and the other ones are shifting around it. That's exactly what we wanted to be able to do. So now penguin is at the beginning, and I could ascend. So this shifting mechanic is basically working. That's the test that we've been doing. We wanted to be able to test collapsing of lanes as well. And so if we try that, let's make an empty space here. And now we're going to try and collapse this lane. So this is one of the functions we were just looking at. This is 0, 1, 2, 3. Computers love to start counting from 0. If you know that going into coding, you have just an easier time understanding what's going on. They don't like to count at 1. They start at 0. But 0, 1, 2, 3. So this is position 3, and we would like to collapse it. That test actually reduced the entire space by 1. That space is now no longer empty because all those other items have been shifted into place. So there's only 1 empty space now. It's position 0, and we can collapse that as well. So this is testing the collapse mechanism, and that is also working. This is great. We have the rules, and we've tested that this system works, and we could apply this to anything we want, a hand, or the lanes, or the attack order. And that's exactly what we want to be able to do. Adding to that now, we want to be able to expand a space. While this function is literally what we just played with, we collapsed a space. We said, start with a space, and check to make sure that the lane you want to collapse, or the space in the slot in that space you want to collapse, is not already filled. It needs to be empty, and it's within the range of the space itself. As long as that's all good, then go ahead and collapse it. We make a temporary space. We make that space 1 smaller than the current space. Why? Because it's going to get smaller. We want it to reduce it by 1. We figured out everything else is okay, so we're good to do this. This temporary space is smaller by 1, and we then go through the original space and copy. We want to copy each slot, but we will ignore the 1 slot that we're going to remove. Simple as that. We go through each space in the original shiftable space. Each slot we look at and copy to our temporary space, but we ignore if this current slot that we're looking at is not the position that we want to remove, then copy it. Otherwise, we're ignoring it. At the end of this, we'll just go ahead and make our space that we want to adjust equal to that temporary space that we've been copying to, and thereby it is 1 smaller, and it excludes the one we've removed. Done. We do this configure blockage to just make sure all the shiftable items in the space know if they are blocked from shifting left or ascending or descending. This routine is used often. Actually, we want to make sure our shiftable items are always up to date. Well, this is the opposite of that. We want to find a spot in the space to expand. A position will be, I actually wrote this. This is something I wrote. The position that we tell it to expand from is the place where we will begin to shift a bunch of things up. So if we're saying from slot 0, then that means from the first position in the space, shift everything up and make that new space blank. So we're going to expand the space. But it's interesting how similar this looks. Take a space and make sure that it's a good position to expand from. But then do something. We haven't done anything yet. I left that for, well, the stream, frankly. The rest of the code might actually borrow from some of this, because we do want to have a temporary space to work from. We probably want to make that temporary space equal to the current one with an extra slot. So this is going to look very similar. We are going to make sure that it knows the length is 1 longer, and we're going to likewise copy. But it's interesting, instead of ignoring one of the slots, we are going to just start from a place that is the position and copy all of them. How do I say this? We're going to have to think this through. But this mechanism is what's different. When we expand the lane, we're still copying from the old one to this temporary one, and then we're still going to make the changed space be equal to the temporary before we are done. And we're definitely going to do this as well. So what I'm saying is we're going to be lazy. We're going to be lazy, and we're going to include some of this same code, because we also want to do things like make a temporary space to work with that will be changed, but it will refer to the original one we're working on. And it will, at the end of it, be copied back to the one we're working on, so that the one we're working on is free to be messed with. The one that we actually end up with is can just be assigned to the same value as the thing that we've worked on. This is similar. We're definitely going to have something similar here, but it's always a little bit of a danger when you copy and paste code, because you're going to have to look through and make sure that there are things that need to be changed. In this case, we are not subtracting one of the slots in the space, we're adding one. So we definitely want to change this. Oops, hello. And likewise, it needs to know that it is not less of the space, it's more. And I'm hearing the music stopped. Pardon me while I fix that. I don't know why the music stops. Somebody was trying to tell me it has something to do with whether I'm talking or not, or if it detects the microphone is in use or not, which is odd. That seems odd to me. Oh, and I will skip this one because it has someone talking in it. All right. Fair enough. Back from the jungle, back into the code. The idea being, we definitely still want to take a space to work from and a position to work with. The position will be where we expand from. Whatever is in that slot will be moved up, ascending. And so will anything else that needs to be shifted up. In its place, there will be an empty space. It will expand and leave an empty space in this slot. Okay. The things before that will just be the same. In other words, copied. So actually, yeah, let's do the same thing, right? We, in fact, may want this count as well. The count is makes sense when we're removing something because this position of the temporary is definitely going to be different as we go through all of the original slots because we've removed one. And at some point, those will be two different numbers. We might do the same thing. I don't know. We're gonna see if that's again, we're gonna copy and paste and be very careful about what we've pasted to see what needs to change. I'm pretty sure actually a lot of this needs to change. We are not ignoring one at that position. That is not what we're doing, but we are copying. So right now I'm just gonna say we're going to keep this part. Oops, hello. That was like not at all what I was trying to do. There we go. We are definitely copying. The difference being like, as we count up, we should actually be, this number represents where in the temporary position are we, and it's going to be different as soon as we insert a new empty slot in this shiftable space. We may still, actually, now that I think about it, we may still start at the beginning of the original space and go up. That still may be true. The temporary one, however, has an extra slot, and I guess what we need to do is say the count will also go up by 1, just like this I variable. These will be in sync and be the same number until we have reached the position that we're using to insert. Because after that, those numbers will be different. But before then, they will be the same. If I said something like, there's nothing to count from the original to the temporary if we are at that position. There's nothing to copy because we're inserting a brand new one. And it will be blank. So I'm actually going to ask, while we're going up through this original shiftable space, are we at that position? Oh, this is a double equal sign to ask the question, are we? A single equal sign, this isn't a coding stream, it's not code teaching stream, but a single equal sign says assign this value to that thing. A double equal sign is used in like if statements to ask the question, does I equal position? That's what this line is literally saying. And if that's true, then I want to do something. Well, what do I want to do? If I does equal position, I think I want to just increase the count because count is saying where to assign a new item. Actually, I want to do this every time. There's no case in this whole thing where I don't want to keep counting up. It's actually just shiftables that needs to how do I say this? In this, if this is true, if I'm at the position I want to insert, I actually want to do two things. Because this will continue counting up along the original space. At this moment, when I'm at the space I want to insert, I actually want to do two things. One, create a brand new shiftable slot. at this count. Yes, absolutely. And it's going to equal, what did I call this? Initialize shiftable. Yeah, exactly. In other words, just make a brand new empty one at that slot. Do that. Now, if I leave this alone, if I just leave this code exactly as it is, it will go to the next line, which does use I and this count. Well, I actually need it to continue to count up. So I'm actually doing more than this. I am, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm also counting up. In other words, this is the point where we want to add a new slot. So while we're here, and before we move on the original shiftable space, go ahead and at this position, make a new one, have it equal a new one, and count up. Because while I is going to remain the same, we haven't actually looped around and done more and more and more. Count is now one extra. And it's one extra this one time while we're in this particular case, this particular condition. So now it is out of sync, which is what we want. And now this can just continue, right? This line says, take the next item in the original and make it equal to this particular spot in the temporary. We've increased where that is, which is great because we inserted a blank one. So I think that's right. Logically speaking, right, top to bottom, logically speaking, while we're going through, detect if we're in that position. If we are, add a blank one, increase the count, and just continue. I think that's it. We do the rest where we configure the blockage and return the thing, and I think that's it. Let me just double check by reviewing the old one. This is an error. Just checking to make sure it's not an empty one. Okay, we're not going to do that. I think that's it. Should we test? Of course we should. Part of computer science is the scientific method, meaning we have a theory and we want to test it. We have our best guess and we want to make sure that it meets the success that we want it to have. In other words, I want to expand a space. I think this works. Let's find out if it actually does. To do this, I will add some of our testing stuff to this test script that we have in the scene. In other words, it says collapse position, do collapse. I'm going to add expand at position and do expand. Let's add that. No big deal. It's easy. I'm asking it to make new variables. The variable includes an integer number of where to expand, which position to expand from. As long as it's, I don't know, 0 or more and not more than the length of the space, it should be fine. And then I would like for it to wait until I say, please do the expand, because I want to actually observe the test, and so I want to be ready for it. So this checkbox that I'm making will allow me to just check it as it's running, and it will do what I want. As I've added just those variables, now suddenly my tool has these variables publicly available. That's why I said the word public. So I can see it here in the inspector, and I can do my test. I'm going to press play, let this do this thing, and with these test items in a test shift space, I will do an expand. It's not set up yet, but let's do that now. So the beginning of this script, I simply make those test items, the test space and the silly things that are there, including I do test an item we never see because I literally remove it immediately. This was also a test. I wanted to remove an item and test that, so I have. I just haven't taken the time to clean this up because I don't plan to clean this up ever. It is a test script. I will just code some test stuff and then I will abandon this script because it's done its job. In this way, I'm asking, hey, while you are running, while the engine is running, I look for things like whether I've checked the box to do the move or a collapse or expand. Now I'm actually saying do expand. And if that is true, I would like to immediately uncheck that box because it's doing it now and I don't want it to continue doing it. I want it to perform the shift space expansion. Yes? What's this? Well, it's a line of commenting code. It's best practices to explain what's going on in your code to humans. The computer literally ignores all the comments, but it's for humans. It's not for the computer. I have shift space. There it is. It's just best practice, and you will understand that I'm not only trying to code a game, but I'm demonstrating best practices of both design and code. That's what we're doing. I have a tool in place for this test script ready to help me. It is called Shifter, and it includes all of those functions that I have made so far, including the one we just worked on. It's called expand the space. It's funny that Visual Studio immediately knows and is predicting what I might need to be doing next, because it is exactly right. I do want to do that. It even knows about these new variables that I made, the expand position and such. Cool. That was easy. Literally, I'm ready to test this idea. I expect the best guess that I'm testing, the hypothesis that I'm testing, because this is science, is that when I hit play, I'm going to see our test shift space here. I am able to, as we showed before, take a position and collapse it. That's what we did before. But I want to see if I can expand a space. I'm going to start at position 1 and expand it from there. And according to the rules that we want this system to follow, it will take Billy and Penguin and the other things and actually move them up because it's going to add a new position here. Let's test. Hey, it actually did. I want to do more than one test. I want to make sure that it's doing its thing. I guess I could just keep adding at position 1 and it would keep doing that. Yeah, sure enough. So that means that we could, I don't know, collapse at position 1 as well. Ooh, look at this functionality. That's nice. So we could collapse at position 3. Expand. Sorry, I just hit expand. But we could collapse at position 3 as well. Yes. So nice. We actually have the expansion and collapsing all working, and that's fun stuff. So we can shift things around. I'm going to shift 4 in a descending way. Cool. I can shift things up. Ascending from 0 pushes everything up. It puts the blank one up at the top. I can collapse the beginning one. Absolutely. And I can expand from anywhere I want. Cool. This proves out the success of the system that we've coded. And thankfully, I thought ahead and made sure that this is applicable to anything we want. In other words, it is generalizable. I can apply this to any general application where I may want this mechanism of shifting things in a list around, just like I may want for the cards in our deck. Exactly like this, but this is done in the editor. Literally, the Unity editor has this mechanism in place, and boy, isn't it convenient to do this. Well, I want the same convenience for my player in my game. So they can grab a card and move it around in their hand, and it would do this. They could grab a card and move it around in the lanes or in the order of attack. And I want that mechanism. This has proven that out. Cool. Hey, is Valorant up yet? So, what we've got now is sort of a sidetrack because I literally wanted to make sure that we could shuffle around. I don't have my pen. Wanted to make sure we could shuffle around so that we can graduate from having two cards battling each other, which is nice. I mean, this is okay. But it's rather limited, and we know for a fact it's way too simple for something like, players who want to play a battle card game. It's nice to look at. I don't mind the effects that we added to it. But we know that this is too simple. If you were asked, look at these cards, pick one, it will battle against some other card. This would be, I don't know, maybe fun to watch once or twice. Hopefully you're entertained with the other content of this channel enough to recognize that we're going to move on from that. We're going to graduate to something a little more sophisticated where there's more than one card. We're going to do that with a new test object, and we're going to use the mechanisms that we've already tested here. So I want the space to be able to figure out what happens when you have more than one card battling against more than one card. And, it includes some interesting questions like if you do have two cards battling against your one card enemy, could you, for example, could the enemy choose which one it attacks, right? If it's your turn and you are facing two enemy cards, should the player be given the choice to pick which card to attack, right? This could be better than setting up a hard rule on how it decides which card to attack. It could be better than that, and it could add to the tactics and strategy. It could also engage the player so that they're not just sitting back and watching the battle play out in front of them. Instead, they are actively involved. So this is okay if you want to see what happens between two cards, but deciding that this card will attack that one could actually be more engaging while a play is going on, while a battle between two sides is going on during a round. In other words, you don't just set up the round and go. You set up the round and go and then make decisions like which card to attack. I think that's part of what we're about to run into in the problem of making more than one card battle more than one card. So given a week, gosh, I really do need to plug in my tablet. Given a week, I'd say we're in good shape. We're not quite at game jam speed, but we're doing pretty good. And now we're at the point where we want to find out what happens when one card battles two or more. We want to know, we want to engage this new mechanic of shiftables so that cards can be laid down in lanes and in attack order and even in your hand. And we want to ask the questions like, we're going to test and we're going to see new things emerge that we aren't anticipating yet. And we could potentially see opportunities like, hey, we realized a better name than Shuffle Wars or something like that. Along the way, we're going to see opportunities and we're going to take them. We're confident we're going to see those opportunities, and we're sure we need to make some testing in order to see them. So that's the progress. We don't lay down one idea and hope for the best. We're going to lay down an idea and continue to improve it. That's the design process. So hopefully this took enough time to be called a stream. Yeah, kind of, sort of. Yeah. Follow our Discord. Come back on stream and listen to the cool music and jungle sounds. If you were on Discord, you would see there is a list of card names, and I had to come up with these, but honestly, this looks like a job for chat. Really? I mean, we should have more people involved. If not for just the potential of saying, "Hey, can you help me with an idea? Can you give your opinion on a thing?" Eventually, this channel could hold people who are also interested in design and are potentially designing or developing their own games. And we can do critique, we can evaluate, we can play test, we can have all kinds of fun with that kind of stuff, along with playing Valorant. Yes, yes, yes. But like today, Valorant is down. So while we wait for the new act, I thought this was a decent day to dip our toe into a code stream. Yeah, well, technically we did a code stream. And I think it's fun to say nerding out is something I do anyway. So, including random people who are browsing Twitch and saying, "What's this ape doing anyway?" I think that's fun for me. So, eventually, we can talk about code in more detail, like how to code in C Sharp or how to code in Blueprint. We can talk about level design, whether it's in Unity or Unreal. We can do all these things. Doing game art for sure. We can absolutely talk about these things. Our scheduled days are Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Until I'm convinced I shouldn't do this, I will also stream at random times, like today. And on that note, I think I've done what is called a random stream. I'm so glad I got a couple of extra follows today. Huzzah! If we get enough people in chat at once, if we have enough people hanging out and doing things at the same time, we could do, something like a giveaway. I haven't even tested the giveaway yet. I spent all December setting up the things that need to happen to make this stream possible so that I could launch at the beginning of the year. One of those things I have not been able to test is a giveaway. You use channel points, you enter into the giveaway, and maybe win a $10 gift code to Valorant. So you buy some Radianite and get some cool skins or whatever. I'd love to test that. So if you're watching this VOD and you're saying, I wouldn't mind $10 gift code, tune in, speak up, make yourself known in chat, and maybe we'll do that soon. In the meantime, I'm going to do a bit more code because we have testing to do with multiple cards going after each other. We're at the point now where we're going to be able to really see something like the game, something close to what the gameplay will be. We haven't been able to see that yet, but we're going to see that soon. And so I'm going to do some code and get that ready to go. And I probably have other things I have to do today too. Probably. Anyway, have fun, do well, be good, talk soon, take care.